Good morning, everyone. So, I want to address something important today. This is going to be the human condition, the ultimate human need. What is it, you might ask? Well, it's something very specific. It's the human need for approval. What is this? You might ask again. Well, it's just self-consciousness. Now, multiple individuals I know of, in fact, everyone I've met thus far is self-conscious to some extent. And I think this applies to every single individual, because so long as you're living and breathing on this earth, you're going to be thinking about yourself from your perspective 24/7. From your own two eyes, from your own two retina, from your own two ears and brain. And ultimately, what makes this so special is that every single individual is self-conscious. Every single individual cares about what the other is thinking about he or her. But ultimately, what the other is thinking about is themselves, not he or her. So what you end up having is this very hypocritical system, whereby it's like a negative feedback loop system, where everybody's constantly trying to garner the attention of another. But if you don't fulfill the other individual's needs and satisfaction, then ultimately you don't receive your own needs and satisfaction. And if the other individual doesn't fulfill this other individual's needs and satisfaction, ultimately they don't fulfill. They're upset, and they probably won't be in a good state to fulfill yours either. And this loop goes around for all the individuals around the road, all the way back to you. Or maybe it loops back into another group or whatever. Right, whatever. But basically, what this means is that when you're self-conscious and you're thinking about how others think of you, really they're thinking about themselves. Right? And when you might say there are counter examples to these, right? What about love? What about hatred? What about like deeper forms of love, right? Care, your parents, your wife, your children, your husband, right? No, but the thing about this is that a husband and a wife are meant to orient to one another, are meant to fulfill one another's personal satisfaction needs. And same goes for friends, same goes for enemies. They want to see some kind of justice being carried out because they feel like you've wronged them. That's for enemies. And as a result, they care about you in order to fulfill their own personal satisfaction and needs. Now then, you may be wondering, is it actually ever possible to not be after your own personal satisfaction and needs? Well, the truth is, yes, it is possible, but it's very difficult. More difficult than you can imagine, right? Because everybody, to a particular extent, like even when you're doing an act of kindness, the ultimate human need is an approval. The ultimate human need is that people see that action. Okay? But let's make this one categorical assumption for a second. Let's assume that there's an individual who's performing an act of kindness on the street, and after receiving gratitude, he rejects that gratitude. After receiving a reward from, say, the mayor, he rejects that reward, like be it monetary or like a public reward, like public exposure. Okay, let's assume that thing. He rejects all of those. Then you might be thinking, oh yeah, he rejects them, therefore he has to be an altruist, right? He has to be selfless, he has to be helpless. But the act of rejection is precisely what makes him not an altruist. Because think about it, if he was receiving this in the form of, say, a salary bonus, he would accept it on the spot, or like a wage. He's probably going to accept it, an increase in his wage, right? He's probably going to accept it because it's something that is deserving and belonging to him. But the fact he rejects it is because that those exchanges are going to dilute his act of kindness to a really low bar. Okay, it's going to dilute his act of kindness, and his act of kindness won't appear as an act of kindness as much in the eyes of others. So ultimately, this is once again another outgoing to like fulfill that innermost sense of satisfaction. And at the same time, right, when people see this act of kindness, they feel very good, they feel very warm in their hearts, right? They're like, oh, there's still good people in this world, oh wow, this is so amazing. And it's really condescending. It's really, really implicitly condescending, because they're like telling themselves, oh wow, this world's good, I feel good about this, therefore I'm a good person, I have to be, because I feel good about this, right? But really, there's nothing in kindness that requires others to feel good about it, right? It's feeling good is just a side effect that people don't want. Okay, and the fact that the altruist projects the rewards in fear of it diminishing his act of kindness already shows that he's not really an altruist, right? But there's a solution to this, and the solution is actually quite simple. Okay, I thought about it for a while, and the solution is this, right? That, okay, let's say he accepts it. All right, let's say he accepts all the rewards, all the monetary gains. Like, okay, come, give me the money, give me the rewards. Fine, if you think I deserve it, I'll embrace it. Now that's an altruist, because he doesn't care whether or not his act of kindness is going to get diminished. He's still going to carry out kind acts. But let's assume he doesn't have that in mind. Let's assume he just accepts it for like some religious reward or like some monetary reward. He's like, okay, fine, yeah, I actually did do this. And in that case, he's not an altruist, right? So the very two distinguishing features here are that his innermost intentions, right? But let's take it a step further. Let's raise the intention. Okay, let's say, okay, fine, he rejects the rewards. He accepts the rewards. He accepts the rewards, the proceedings. He's not really doing it for the reward, but he's still accepting, he's still embracing it, okay? And he's embracing it, and he's saying, oh, you know, I don't care if you criticize me. Yeah, that's an altruist. I don't care if you criticize me, I don't care if you scrutinize me. He doesn't say that explicitly, but like he behaves like it, okay? And then still, he could still be doing that, behaving like this, just so he can appear like a selfless man. He could still be doing that. He could still be accepting the gifts, embracing that identity of being a kind man, and not caring about the scrutiny he receives, whilst still being completely selfish. Or he could not. Yeah, okay, let's just stick with this one for first, because we don't want to get confused. Yeah, he could be doing that. And if he were doing that for that reason, he wouldn't be an altruist. He'd be a stubborn, selfish person. Not stubborn, just selfish person. Okay? Now let's consider the alternative. That, yeah, he does all those exact same things, but he's not doing it to appear like he doesn't care, to appear like he's not embracing the act of kindness. The kindness, just so that he's not embracing being a kind individual and accepting these gifts and embracing it just so that he can feel good about himself. Now let's just say that he really doesn't care about any of those things. Okay, then he really is an altruist. But you see how difficult it is to distinguish? Like, you have to go all the way, you have to reach into the person's deeper most intentions. And it's not like intentions are something that you can identify with instruments. No, it's very hyper-specific. Intentions are something that you feel very explicitly within yourself. You don't care about these things, okay? You don't care about the rewards you receive, but you accept them regardless, and then you donate the proceedings after. Even though a selfish person could still do that to appear that way, but let's say you donate the proceedings after, and you really don't care about how you appear. You just continue doing it. You don't care about the scrutiny, even though a selfish person could do everything you do, word for word, exact copy. And the only distinction that you'd be able to find is the intention, the innermost intention of the individual. Right, so ultimately the decider isn't the public. It isn't how things appear, which goes along with what I've said with all my other videos, right? What appears to be is very deceitful, because the essence of the thing you're talking about, kindness in particular, altruism in particular, the denial of the ultimate need of human approval, these things do not require an appearance. An appearance is a side effect. It is not required. You could have these things without an appearance, but an appearance is just a side effect of because of other individuals are watching you across the street or like on the TV screen in general. And like I said, this makes altruism all the more difficult to identify, which is why some people say, oh, it probably doesn't exist, right? Not because it really doesn't exist, but because it's just super hard to really know for sure. In fact, I think it's probably impossible to know for sure. But I don't think kindness influences. A great example of this are kindness influences. Maybe they do it for the fame, maybe they do it for the money, and this is a great example to articulate what I'm saying here. Maybe they do it for the fame, maybe they do it for the money, but they could also be doing it because they don't care about the scrutiny they receive online. They really need that money to help the poor, and maybe people really do question them even though they're helping others. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to justify any specific kindness influencer here. I'm just giving a really realistic hypothetical, okay? That for all you know, the kindness influencer that you hate the most could be fulfilling all the traits of altruism, could be an actual altruist. And this gets back to my ultimate point. Appearances are deceiving. Just because people appear to be something does not mean that they are that thing. The thing itself does not require an appearance. An appearance, need I remind you, is just a side effect. It's just a side effect from actions, from just any form of light reflecting to the retina, or any idea being extrapolated from what is being said. It doesn't capture your innermost intentions. It's very frequently and often misconstrued. Okay? And the ultimate human need for approval, in order to identify its absence in some individual, is ultimately impossible. Okay? But it's not something that is impossible to defeat either. It is impossible to overcome the ultimate human need for approval. But let's get back to the topic, right? The ultimate human need for approval. What is it? It's being able to fulfill yourself, fulfill your innermost personal desires, right? It's also relying upon your intentions, and it's something that gives you satisfaction and happiness. Though, like I said, an altruist may not have those, but yeah, we've stopped talking about the altruist now. Now let's focus on the human need. So, in a world full of individuals who are constantly worried about themselves, about how they appear to others, and the other people being the exact same individuals constantly worried about how they appear to others, they're trying to appease one another. It's a cycle of appeasement. And when you're in this negative feedback loop, ultimately the only way to escape it is to be an altruist. Is to reject the notion of some kind of ultimate form of trying to stop being in the pursuit of pursuing your innermost satisfaction and needs, requirement for approval from others, and focusing on being a true altruist. Okay? So, because if you do the contrary, what happens is that you have to suck up to others, and others are going to try to suck up to you just to climb up their chain of needs for satisfaction. And it gets to a point where you're in a never-ending cycle of a need to satisfy yourself, that nothing is ever sufficient. You have this scarcity of attention because you want unlimited attention. That's impossible because everybody always prioritizes attention to themselves first. So this need for unlimited attention is the backbone of mental health disorders, is the backbone of cyberbullying. It's the backbone of basically most mental health disorders, depression, because other human beings don't like you. So bad tribe man abandoned from by his tribe, and Ooga Booga get kicked out, banished, excluded, isolated. Darwinian evolution says, ooh, very sad, you're probably going to die, so get really sad and body decline. So the main hypothesis for this video is that the only way to be free from all these troubles, all these not prolonged suffering in life, is to be a true altruist. Not care about what others think for you, and have your innermost intentions be true to yourself. Even though it's really difficult to distinguish, but it really does exist because you can feel it within yourselves. Any ordinary human being is the antithesis to that. Unless your brain is wired differently, then I can't speak for that. But I will verify that from my own perspective, from my own standpoint. But obviously, I'm not saying that this kind of state is accessible to every single individual. No, I do acknowledge that there are probably some sociopaths or psychopaths out there. There definitely are some that will definitely never ever reach this kind of state unless they receive some brain-altering chemistry treatment or something. But yeah, that's the ultimate crux of this video, that true altruism is all you need to fulfill your... It's all you need to survive in life. It's all you need to abandon the need for approval. And it's all you need to flourish. Because without the human need for approval, without having unlimited ones, especially in the form of attention, you've abandoned the need for scarcity. You can focus on sustaining yourself and be content with the minimalist of things. Now, I don't think this is actually a new phenomenon. I think it's existed for many ancient pastimes up until the present. It's just that it hasn't been as emphasized because in the past everybody worked as a collective, otherwise they wouldn't be able to survive. But now in the present, people are just a lot more lazier, so you have declining birth rates and that sort of stuff because everybody's just a lot more self-centered. And especially with the attention economy, no, not the attention economy, but I guess it is to some extent, but especially with like people with social media, true intentions are a lot more difficult to identify now. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a natural intuition for it back in the Middle Ages or even further back in Ooga Booga tribes. Point being that back then the ultimate need for satisfaction was still present. It was just really clouded, right? There's just so many layers of teamwork that you had to get before you can ultimately satisfy your innermost desires, which always existed. Need I remind you, because of your autonomous brain and your complicated thoughts and your need for attention. But I think they developed side by side, and the teamwork with the human beings that reduced over time just made that spot more and more obvious growing throughout, right? So this is actually an interesting paradox I've thought of. So you have teamwork where everybody needs to work as a collective, everybody needs to be together and work together to fulfill some goal, otherwise they can't survive in the jungle. And at the same time, if you're excluded from this team, you're probably going to die out. So you need to please the team in order to satisfy, in order to fulfill your own personal you need this need to satisfy the team so that you'd be able to join them and survive with them and flourish with them. And in procuring this need, because of hundreds and thousands of years of human presence on this earth, what ends up happening is that it gets embedded as one of your requirements for personal satisfaction. That personal satisfaction namely being to please others. But it's developed into an unhealthy obsession, combined with the effects of the modern day era. You get like the worst thing we've seen thus far. Attention deprives people seeking personal validation for themselves, because an old evolutionary necessity has been conflated with modern day comfort, laziness, stagnation, and just having nothing else but to think about your own old tribal instincts, because you no longer need to think as rationally. Actually, I wouldn't say that. You need to think a lot more rationally. Like, we still have institutions and that sort of stuff, but when you're alone by yourself at home, when you're in the comfort of your home, I guess these old ancestry things kick in, and they seep into our lives, be it when we're at work, etc. The need to satisfy, to fulfill. It's not just a survival instinct. It's something that's really unhealthy. Okay, it's something that really is actually the antithesis of you. Destroys your mental health, and even though it was a beneficial thing in the past for survival, which is why I've said true altruism is the only way to escape it. But obviously, if you were a true altruist in the past, you would have probably died because nobody cared about you, but you wouldn't have cared either. But right now, mental health is a big thing, so I guess I think the true altruists will survive. The ones not the ones with the declining birth rates, which is self-destructive because they're going to be too self-centered to focus on fulfilling their needs. But obviously, people who give birth as well, they also have their focus on fulfilling their needs. Okay, actually, just ignore what I said. It's the birth rating is nonsense. But point being, the true altruists will always die out, but they'll be the happiest. Okay, they'll be the happiest individuals. And the more self-centered you are, the more likely your birth rate is going to decline in the country because you don't care about having a spouse. And the irony of it is that having a spouse actually takes a lot more to care less about yourself, especially with rising cost of living. It takes a lot more effort to not care about yourself in spite of the rising cost of living and have a spouse than it does to care about yourself, be condescending, be super self-conscious, and as a result, you're not gonna get married. You're gonna pursue all your level of satisfaction, all your satisfactory needs. Probably not going to get a husband or wife. Probably just going to suck up to someone else, get into your little situationship or polyamorous degenerate nonsense, and all that's gonna come crashing down on you. All these people are gonna go extinct. The people who really don't care about themselves, really just want a wife, so they not to fulfill their personal satisfaction or needs, but because they're true altruists, right? They don't expect anything in return, and maybe they're good at their job, right? But that's a different subject. It's not relevant. Maybe they're good at it, but these are the people that are going to be the next generation of the nation. The population is going to decline, and it's going to stagnate to the point where all you have left are true altruists who don't care about the rising cost of living. All they care about is not themselves. You're going to have this generation of people, of true altruists, raised up from these dark times of secularism and humanist values creeping in, promoting self-centeredness, and then the self-centered people are going to decline, and then you have the true altruists, and they may very well be religious, they may very well not be religious, they may very well be humanistic altruists, but these are the people that are going to remain, and then they're going to raise society up to higher standards, and the cycle is going to repeat. So that's my thoughts. True altruism is the way to do it. It's the best thing for humanity. I've just defined it this video. It took me like 20 minutes, but yeah, I'm sure. Attack my hypothesis. Share with me your thoughts. I'm curious. Thank you, everybody.